Hi, I'm your host David, and welcome to another episode of Debu Living. We're glad to have with us pianist, producer, and composer Eddie Bullen to the show. Welcome, Eddie.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us today. To start us off, can you tell us more about yourself? Like, what made you interested in pursuing a career in music?
Well, it started with my dad. My dad was a musician in the Caribbean, and he traveled a lot and played extensively through the Caribbean, and then he morphed into having a music store. So when I was born, that's where I grew up, in a music store. You know, we sold pianos, organs, drums, guitar, bass, everything. And what used to happen is that when musicians came to the island, they would all come into my dad. Musicians always look for a music store. And my dad would be so happy that musicians, from the tourist ships, musicians who have gone away, who have been Grenadians, and they come back. So he'd have a jam session. And me as a kid, like 9, 10 years old, looking at these guys having so much fun, playing and people applauding them, they would leave, and then I would go on the piano and just try to pretend to play. So that really was the genesis of, of how I started, and the influence that I've had. My dad and his friends, sometimes they'll get together and they'll talk about music, and that again was another stepping stone for me to pursue music. And then I played in the hotels. Myself and my brother. My brother is also a drummer, and I'd go from different hotels and play. My dad would speak to the owners of the hotels, and that would open the doors for us to go into the hotels and perform in the evening. So that's really how I started. And I started doing my first concerts. I put together a whole concert when I was 19 years old in my hometown, and sold out the place. It was called the Jazz Connection. I put all my friends together, put a band together, and did a concert. So that's the genesis of how I started. I was in a musical family.
That's very interesting. Obviously, your dad had a very big impact on you. You obviously worked with some very notable names in the music industry, like Deborah Cox and others. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, well, I've been fortunate that a lot of these artists have allowed me to work with them and produce them, So Debbie, I worked with her, with a friend of mine by the name of Washington Savage. He was doing a record, and Deborah came in, and he needed help in the production, so I helped him produce, Deborah Cox. I've worked with people like Liberty Silver, who is a Juno Award winner. I've produced several albums for her. I've worked with people like Keisha Wint. I've worked with Melba Moore, who's she used to be on the Cosby Show. I've worked with her. I've worked with a lady called Didi Bridgewater from the States. I've toured China with her. I've also worked with, local artists as well, Molly Johnson. I just did a concert actually on last Saturday at Crona Hall, and it featured people like Jay Douglas, Molly Johnson, Jackie Richardson, the Salome Bay's Daughters, to name a few. I was the musical director for that. And I've been fortunate to work with so many artists. I've been the musical director for people like Solomon Burke and Benny King. For example, Benny King is the one who wrote the song Lean on Me,
That's
actually
a very popular one.
Yeah, not Lean on Me. When the night is come and the moon is Stand By Me.
Yes, Stand By Me. Yeah, that's another one.
I've worked with Benny King as musical director. Percy Sledge, he sang "When a Man Loves a Woman."
Right, that's another popular one as well.
Song.
Yes.
So I've been really fortunate to be working with a lot of these people. As usually sometimes as a backing musician, and sometimes as the musical director, like putting the band together, So when they come in town, I have the band prepared. We have all the music prepared. They walk in and they sing, and I've done that for many years. With also my productions, I've produced over 250 albums for different artists from all genres, from calypso to reggae to R&B to hip hop. There's a gentleman by the name of Maestro Fresh West. I was fortunate to produce a couple of songs for him on his single that went gold. So that was, these are little things that I am, they allowed me, they trusted me to help them in their career. So for me, that means a lot.
That's very interesting. You're also a pianist.
Yes.
So can you tell us what are your favorite pieces to listen to and why?
Well, there are a couple of pianists that I like. One of them, which is on the top of my list, is a gentleman by the name of Oscar Peterson. Oscar Peterson is a Canadian jazz pianist, and he's world-renowned. I think he's done over 180 albums. And I had a chance of meeting him and, just speaking to him for a little while. But he is one of the pianists that I listened to when I was a young lad and being totally blown away. And I mean, a lot of jazz pianists will, if Oscar Peterson walks into the room, they always start bowing because he is so amazing. So he's one of the guys. Another gentleman is a guy called Herbie Hancock, who is a really wonderful pianist. Chick Corea is another amazing pianist. A guy by the name of McCoy Turner. So there are a lot of, pianists that I like. I mean, there's another Canadian that I like who is a producer and a pianist as well too. His name is David Foster. David Foster is a guy who produced a lot of the hits for Whitney Houston, for Celine Dion, Josh Groban, like he's Chicago, a lot of those. So I like a lot of his stuff too, because I play some modern stuff as well too. So I like a lot of those piano players that can be versatile in their playing, not only jazz, but we can play some, popular music that makes it happen. So yeah, for me, those are really, really, great wings to be flying on.
Very nice, very nice. Can you describe to us your typical day or week as a musician? Like, what do you do? Obviously, you have a lot on your plate, so
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about that?
Well, usually I start with it in my studio. My first session will be at 11 o'clock. And somebody will come into the studio and we start working until about 3. And I'll take a break. Then I'll probably do another session, which would last until 8 or 8 o'clock. And when I was younger, I'd start another session at 9 o'clock and then go till 1. So I'm all day in the studio. However, the older I get, once 9 o'clock reach, I am out. So usually these days I'll do one session a day, and then I'll get prepared to go and do a performance in the evening. So, and usually those performances will be either a Thursday, a Friday, or a Saturday. Sometimes I do solo piano. Sometimes I will play with my band. Sometimes my son, who is also a musician, his name is Quincy Bullen. Actually, I have 2 sons that are musicians, Quincy Bullen and Trey Michael Bullen.
Nice.
And they both play with me. And Quincy has his own band, so sometimes he will ask me to play with him on a lot of different projects that he has. So I am surrounded by music, and my family, who is musical as well too. My wife also sings, and she has a career by herself. Her name is Belinda Brady, and she's from Jamaica, so she does a lot of reggae stuff. So sometimes we do performances where she is the main performer. So it varies, my day will vary. The top of the week, I'm pretty much in the studio. the bottom of the week, I am performing. I'm in the studio and I'm performing.
Right, that's very nice. You obviously mentioned that you like to work with your sons, but who is the musician who you haven't worked with and you would love to work with? Why?
Well, I would have liked to work with Quincy Jones, who is a producer, because I'm a producer, and my son's name is Quincy, so you can see why.
It resonates.
Yes, he's been sort of preordained. I mean, there a lot of musicians that I would like to work with. Stevie Wonder. I mean, I met Stevie and I hung out with Stevie, so that was really cool. And yeah, I mean,
Any
for me,
specific reasons why specifically Stevie Wonder?
yeah, I mean, he is such a talented individual. Stevie Wonder plays keyboards, he plays drums, he can play a little bass, and his songwriting, you know, for somebody who is vision impaired, he writes such beautiful songs. You know, I just like to work with him and you know, get into his brain. Quincy Jones as well, you know, like what makes them tick. I'd sit down and listen to the albums that Quincy Jones produced, you know, and just try and get into the nuances, why he did this, why he did that. I worked on a project that David Foster was on, so that was pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, and there's some singers too that I would have liked to work with. Celine Dion was one of them. I have a song that she was almost supposed to do, you know.
Very nice.
Yeah, so we delivered it to her, but you know, there are a lot of people who were in that delivery and they got the pick, but we were highly considered to be added to one of the albums that she did.
Very nice. Can you tell us like what's in the works for you? Obviously, our viewers will be interested in that. Any new albums that you're currently working on, or what's next for Eddie Bullen?
Yeah, a new project that I'm working on is actually a project with my wife. We started a thing called Session in Progress, and what we did is we did a call out to female artists. And you don't have to be a professional. You can be a artist that, you know, or somebody who likes to sing in the bathroom but never had the chance to really come out of there and perform and write a song and record it with a producer. So we did that call out, and we had several entries. And what I had to do is to put different groups together. So that is done. We did what we call songwriting camps, where we had all the groups sit in one room and write the song. What I did is I made the instrumental tracks so they can write to, and they wrote the songs. And they came into the studio, record them. My son, Trey Michael, is a videographer, so we have a studio in our basement set up to do videos and photographs. So he did all of that. My wife is social media marketing. She does, you know, social media marketing and promotion. So she's doing a lot of promotion. Plus we have 2 companies that are doing the distribution and the promotion of it.
Very nice.
Yeah, so that is my major project. I mean, and I'm also working on with other artists as well too, producing records. Right now I'm producing a record for a gentleman by the name of Cairo McLean, who won a Juno for the reggae category about 2 years ago. And you know, I have several things. I'm getting ready to do my new album as well too. So for
Can
me,
you tell us more about that? Any release dates? Or I don't know that yet.
Yeah, I don't know that yet, but I think it'll be in the fall. I like to release. I have good luck in the fall, you know. There's one of my albums that I released actually November the 15th, and it went to number 15 on Billboard. So for me, that's a great achievement. So I figure I will stick with that. It works. Another thing that I have coming up is my boat cruise. It's called Eddie Bullen and Friends Smooth Jazz Cruise.
Nice.
And then I always have around 2 weeks after Carabana. So it's a cruise that goes around the lake that, you know, and I have artists that come, I invite. I never tell my audience who it's going to be, they'll always be surprised. They trust me to make the judgment and sort of securing the artist. Yeah, and so those are, a couple of the things that I have.
That's
A
great.
few
You
of them.
obviously have a lot on your plate, and we really appreciate you joining us on this interview, Mr. Eddie.
Yes, thank
If
you.
there any other thing you would like to add, maybe you're more than free to do so.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's wonderful to sort of go back through a lot of the things that you've done. Like, you've asked some detailed questions, and I think I've covered most of it. My recording studio is called Thunderdome Sounds, and yeah. So yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. And to all our viewers, I'm your host, David. Stay tuned for another episode of Debu Living. Thank you for joining us.